Welcome everybody, this is B Squared with Indianapolis Community Online Magazine, the place to be in the house of genre, what we like to call the underground music box. Today I am very excited. I have a great inspirational person that we're going to talk to for quite a few minutes, and we're just going to talk about his life, his music, and just everything that's involved with what he's doing. And I want to introduce him to everyone. Some know him, many know him. And for those that don't, you will after this interview. I'd just like to introduce Mr. Rodney Stepp. Say hello, Rod.
Well, hello out there. It's good to be here. It's good to be here.
Great to have you here, man. I'm very excited for a number of reasons. We obviously have a history of going back and just a music history together, but I am here just to really ask you some questions and find out the man behind the myth and the legend. So
You're too kind.
I am excited to have you here. I want to talk about, first of all, to start out, tell us a little bit about how you got started.
Well, in the beginning stages, in the early years, as we had discussed earlier today, I was 4.5 years old when my parents took me to Jordan College of Music over at Butler University. I was actually tested because they thought that something was definitely wrong with me. And but it was because of the fact that it was the music thing.
Right.
The stories that I was told by my parents and some of my family members is at about 2.5 years old, I would climb up on my aunt's piano bench because I had an aunt that had a nice piano, and I would start playing, but it would be, instead of most kids that take their hands and just do this, it would be one finger or 2 fingers, and I would actually play individual notes. And then later on they started noticing that I would make melodies. And so by my parents not being musicians and not playing, they just thought this was just phenomenal. And so they got in touch with some people, had me tested. Jordan College of Music actually accepted me at 4.5 years old, and I started taking private piano lessons.
Wow, how do you get accepted into a college at 4.5
Well,
years old?
they did have kids. They had a kid program.
Prodigies.
A lot of kids, but I was probably one of the youngest that had, at that time. We won't say when that was.
Now, we talked about it a little bit earlier, and I want to get into this. You know, most of us with music and our backgrounds and our careers, we typically remember that first record, what excited us, who did we see, and what made the wheels go off, you know, and I would like to know, who was the first influence that you remember as far back as you can remember it?
As far as back as I can remember, my mother, really, they were very diverse. My mother and dad, they played a lot of music in our household. Everything from Sarah Vaughan to Ella Fitzgerald to Dinah Washington, Brooke Benton, Nat King Cole, all of that old stuff there. And but the person and the first concert that I think I can actually remember, and I probably was about 5 or 6 years old, was Mahalia Jackson.
Wow.
And I was so amazed at the power in her voice at that young age. And I started listening to, Mahalia Jackson, a lot. And that was actually in my younger years what really got me started. As I became older, of course, I was influenced by a lot of different musicians, artists, songwriters.
Right.
It's between my closest friends and family. In fact, one of my best friends, James Walker, who I still write with to this day, we were Beatle fans. And so for those of you now, you really know the cat's out the bag. When we were over his house on Drake Street, and I was on Brook Street over there in the Planter House homes.
Right.
In the neighborhood over by Addicts High School. We would sneak in the bedrooms with Beatle records, and I would say to this day, Lennon and McCartney are a very strong influence on my writing. But then, it was James Brown, it was Otis Redding, the Bar-Kays, all the Motown and Stax stuff, that Sly Stone was a very big influence on me in the mid-'60s. And so, it just evolved and grew, and till then I started listening to jazz, and it was Herbie and Chick Corea and Oscar Peterson, and You know,
Oh, yeah. All the
my good
greats.
friend Alex Bouillon, who's a good mentor and friend, and George Duke, you know, the whole 9 yards.
Right.
And it just kept evolving and evolving and to what it's become today.
Interesting. A lot of people may not know this about Rodney, but you know, it's sort of like being a kid and you watch your favorite basketball player or your pro basketball team, and then you actually get to participate with them and be on that team with them. It gets a little weird, you know. But he's had the pleasure of not only knowing some of these big, huge artists and acts, but he's been the man behind a lot of that music. So I want you to talk a little bit about some of the groups that you've been with. Most notably the Spinners. I know a lot of people like to remember that big group, but there are others. So,
you know, if you start from the beginning, it started off the Diplomats in high school and grade school. The Diplomats became a very popular band in the city, and we were 12, 13, 14 years old. We were basically, we didn't emulate them because we didn't even know about the Jackson 5, but we were similar to the Jackson 5. Later on, I'll show you old pictures where we actually had, you know, uniforms back then, yellow outfits, red, green, you know, and we were mentored very well by a group called Designated Productions, who was very instrumental in growing me up in the music industry. Bo Ramsey, Freddie, and Rudy Smith, Guy Russell, you know, those guys, Designated Productions were very instrumental, and they were very instrumental to get us on that road with the Spinners and everybody else, because I know this may get a little complicated here, but when we were 14, 15, 16 years old, Designated had 4 or 5 bands in their organization, in their productions. And what they would do is take the best musicians out of each band and form a band that we call the Creation Show Band. So you had all these great musicians, Alan Burke, that you know very well, you know, Stanley Batten, Maurice Cheeks, had horn. We had these horn sections that were phenomenal, you know. And we would actually play behind big artists like Joe Tex, the Emotions, the Spinners, you know, just a whole lot of people, you know, a lot of different artists out there. And what happened with the Spinners, they remembered some of us when times started changing and they actually started getting their own rhythm sections to travel. Because back then, so a musical director would fly into town, find the musicians, rehearse them a couple of days, the groups would come in, do a sound check, and do a show. That's the way it used to be when groups weren't traveling with their musicians. And so, you know, as all of that evolved, and later on during the years, I ended up with the Spinners, which was the biggest group I'd ever been with. Had a great run with them, with Felipe Wynn when he was there as a lead singer. A lot of people in the industry knew me from Mighty Love. They still talk about the organ solo on Mighty Love, and Spinners Live and everything. But you know, getting a chance to work with Maurice King from Motown, Gil Lasky, Tom Bell, Gamble and Huff, all of these phenomenal producers and people during that time, getting a chance to meet them, see their work ethics, work with people like, you know, see Linda Creed and, you know, the songwriters, you know, and then having the chance to play behind other artists, Sister Sledge, Ronnie Dyson. You know, I got a chance to do a little stint with a song or two with Etta James over in Zaire, Africa, you know. Zaire, you know, and the Muhammad Ali, George Foreman fight. And, but, you know, it's been a blessing. My life has truly been a blessing to be able to do some of the things that I've done. And now to be here, sitting here with you, witnessing about all of these things, these phenomenal things that God has brought me through.
It's awesome. It's almost overwhelming, you know, taking some of it in. It's just like thinking about just the journey. You know, you and I had an interesting conversation earlier, and you also talked a little bit about being in Zaire. Where all has your music taken you?
Oh, man.